Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and today we're going to be ranking the Twisted Metal small brawl characters from worst to best. So let's get right into it. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you've been here for a while, you may already know that I've already done a Twisted Metal small brawl tier list in the past, roughly about a year ago. And I just gotta say that that list is horribly outdated, and most of my decisions here will be completely different than what you saw in that tier list. Everything in this list is my personal definitive list for the characters of Twisted Metal Small Brawl, but if you disagree with my list, that is still totally okay, understandable, and I would love to hear your guys' list from worst to best in the comment section below. My ranking criteria this time around is going to be based off of their special weapon, just how strong is the special weapon, is it unique, is it fun to use, and how big is the skill gap. Their amount of armor, just how strong is the vehicle without having to run for health every 5 seconds, how fast is the vehicle, just how quick is it to accelerate, how fast does it run at full speed, its handling, how well does it handle that speed and or lack of speed, and the creativeness, just essentially the look of the vehicle, how it feels, and just how unique is the car compared to anything else we've seen before. And with that ranking criteria out of the way, we're going to start at the worst of the worst, which is number 16, Warthog. Warthog in Small Brawl has been notorious for being the worst vehicle in the game by a mile. They have really bad stats all across the board. Their special weapon is really just nothing special. It's essentially the exact same Warthog special we've seen from the previous other PlayStation 1 titles, except for TM4's Warthog. However, instead of just being an all-around regular special weapon that's really decent to use, it's got very bad tracking and it does little to no damage. It's essentially useless. Not only that, but he has some of the worst armor in the entire game, so he's a very easy to kill vehicle. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, being that he should be a glass cannon in a lot of ways, but yeah, he's extremely weak. And his speed and his handling both aren't even that great either. So just all around, he's not a fun character to play as, and he really only comes into play when you're trying to challenge yourself to the highest degree. And moving on to number 15, we have Mr. Grimm. Once again, Grimm sadly has been shafted this time around. Not necessarily sure what exactly happened, but for some reason, he just isn't as strong or as fun to play as he normally would have been in other previous titles. When I think of Mr. Grimm, I always feel that he should be the fastest vehicle in the game, have the best handling in the game, and probably have the strongest special weapon in the game. It just makes sense because he also usually is the weakest vehicle in the game, being that he's a motorcycle. This time around though, I think Warthog actually was a little bit weaker than Mr. Grimm, so at least he has that going for him. His speed is relatively good and his handling is very good as well, but yeah, Mr. Grimm's special weapon is just, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's essentially the same thing we've always seen in previous games. It's a straight shot power missile special weapon, but if you get a direct hit, it doesn't really do all that much damage compared to a regular power missile in the game. So it really just comes down to, why am I playing Mr. Grimm when there's so many better characters in this game with better special weapons? So yeah, if his special weapon did a little bit more damage, I think he would have been a lot higher on this list. But for now, I think number 15 is a fair spot. And moving on to 14, we have Spectre. This is another painful spot for me because Spectre has an amazing design. I love the look of the car. I think it's unique. It reminds me of Speed Racer, and I love the glow-in-the-dark effects on the vehicle as well. His speed is also really good with really decent handling, so he's not a bad car to drive at all, but his armor is very weak, just like Mr. Grimm and Warthog before it, and his special weapon, once again, just leaves a lot to be desired. I just don't know what happened here with the special weapon. It's a cool design, I will give it that. It's, for the first time ever, not just a regular ghost missile. It's actually technically 3 separate ghosts that come out of the vehicle and they chase after its opponent. It does go through walls, which is nice, but it doesn't really go the full length of the map like it's done in previous games. And even when it does reach the character, it has some really weird tracking bugs where it ends up not hitting the character most of the time. And if you actually end up getting all 3 ghosts to hit the vehicle, it doesn't really do any damage at all anyway. So yeah, it's just a real bummer. I love the design of the car. I love the design of the special weapon. It's just the damage and the tracking alone make it pretty much useless. And thus again, just not a fun character to play as. So I think number 14 is a fair spot. And moving on to number 13, we have Mime. Now, this one might be controversial. There are a lot of people out there that absolutely love Mime as a character. I think she's a great addition to the game. I love her design, don't get me wrong. But actually playing as her, it's more of a challenge than it is actual fun. So that's why I feel having her lower on the list makes a lot of sense. Don't get me wrong, I understand her special weapon is pretty much broken. She can literally use any special weapon in the game as long as that character is within sight. So whoever she's looking at, if you switch to your special weapon, you gain their special weapon. And the best part about it is it does the exact same amount of damage as it would if you were playing as said character. Obviously though, her downsides are her speed, her handling, and her armor. Those three attributes alone make it just not a fun character for me personally to play as, but her special weapon is a lot of fun to mess around with, and again, it's a unique design that I absolutely love and adore, and would love to see Mime make a return in the Twisted Metal series if we're lucky enough to get another game. But for right now, 13 is the spot for Mime. And at number 12, we have Axel. Another controversial pick. I know Axel is actually one of the most hated vehicles in this game, but for me personally, I think they're kind of mid. They're not hated, but they're also not loved. I like the design of the character that looks like a foosball character, which is pretty funny. I like the handling of this vehicle. I think the speed is actually pretty decent. It's mainly just their special weapon and their armor where they fall flat. Their special weapon is not bad by any means, but it is a challenge to actually get it to hit anybody and do any damage. It shoots out a single missile, and it has to actually attack the character before the rest of the missiles start coming out of your character as you spin around wildly. And the accuracy of those missiles is really well done and does a decent amount of damage if you're able to hit that first skill shot. So I understand why a lot of people don't like Axel in this game. They're probably just used to the regular Shockwave special. I honestly miss it myself, but I also have to applaud them for being a little creative and changing it up for the first time in the series, and I'm just glad Axel is here at all. But yeah, their weak armor also is not a big selling point. They can die pretty quickly, and they're not the fastest car either, so I totally understand why Axel's at the bottom of the barrel for most people, but for me, I think 12 is where he should be. And moving on to number 11, we have Trapper. Now, this is the vehicle that you get to play as. I'm not ranking the boss characters based on how they are going against them. This is strictly just how they feel to play as. And with Trapper, it's such a disappointment. I really can't express it other than just that. When you go against Trapper, he is probably the best boss in the game. Piecemeal being the final boss is great and all. I like their design, but just for some reason, as a kid, I have more memories going against Trapper and be more afraid of him. His Monkey's Barrel special is hilarious and also very devastating to go against. And overall, his design is really fun and interesting. I've always liked Trapper for those reasons. But when you unlock him, he just is nowhere near his actual boss counterpart. For one, he's half the actual size of the vehicle. After talking to David Goodrich, the lead designer of Small Brawl, it makes a lot of sense why this decision was made. Mainly because the car would take up too much of the display, and on other levels where he wasn't necessarily meant to be in, they would get cut on corners, and it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense with the size of the vehicles, so they had to shrink them down to size, which makes sense. But that doesn't excuse why his armor is also half the size of he is as the regular boss, and his special weapon does pretty much half the amount of damage. I don't know why that was made into consideration. Maybe they just didn't want to make completely busted characters to play as, but for me personally, if you're going through the trouble to have to unlock these characters, maybe they should be busted just to have some fun for unlocking them. So yeah, Trapper's special weapon does barely any damage this time around, and his armor is just okay. He's not terrible by any means, but it's just the fact that he could have been so much better is why it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. So number 11 is where he stays. And coming in the top 10, at number 10, we have Crimson Fury. It's great to see Crimson Fury come back into the game after, I think the last time in the series that he made an appearance at this point was in Twisted Metal 1. So it's cool that they brought him back, and he is fun to play, I will admit this. I put him way too low on my tier list in my previous video, and I want to apologize to all the Crimson fans out there. I totally get your anger. After playing as him a lot more, he is a lot of fun. He's very fast, he's very quick. I believe we've even determined he is technically the fastest vehicle in the game, but his armor leaves a lot to be desired, which honestly makes a lot of sense. He's meant to be a sports car, he's meant to be quick and agile so you can get away from danger pretty quickly, and his armor just kind of stinks. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is his special weapon. I love the design of it, the creativity of it is really cool. It's paper airplanes that are on fire, and they do home in slightly okay on the enemy. If they had better tracking ability where they didn't miss half the time, and they did a little extra bit of damage, I think I would rank him a lot higher on this list. But I just have never been in love with the character, and mainly just because, again, I feel like there's other characters in the game that are just as fast to play as, and they have a way better special weapon to where I'm willing to let go of the bad armor to deal with it. Crimson Fury, on the other hand, is just okay to me, so I feel number 10 is a good spot for them. And moving on to number 9, we have Hammerhead, which is, in my opinion, the best Hammerhead in the entire series of games. I absolutely love the design of this vehicle, and the special weapon is actually really devastating for the first time. Now, don't get me wrong, Hammerhead is not broken or overpowered. I think they're actually really balanced this time around. Their armor is really good. Their pretty sluggish handling and relatively slow speed are understandable, being that it is a monster truck. And the special weapon, again, is really decent. Once you activate it, you get a speed boost that launches you towards an enemy. If you are able to actually touch the enemy, you end up running on top of them, grinding them down with your spiked up wheels, and doing a lot of damage. Not only that, but you can do an exploit by dropping mines on top of characters while you're doing the special weapon to do even more damage, but that's for the more skilled player, and I truly have never been able to master that. But that being said, Hammerhead still is a lot of fun to play in this game. I'm only lowering them on this ranking because of how better all of the rest of the characters are in this game coming up in the list, but Hammerhead is still a great choice, probably one of my first go-tos when I come back from a long time of not playing this game, and he is genuinely a good character. I just wish he was a little bit better in his handling and his speed. And moving on, number 8, we have Thumper. Thumper this time around is very unique. They kind of took elements from every single game, I want to say, to lump them into this one character. I do want to applaud them for bringing back the idea that Thumper is based off sound waves, just like in TM3, and not necessarily just a boring flamethrower. However, I will say I'm not a huge fan of the way they did his special weapon this time around, because his special can be kind of difficult to actually use properly, so there's a pretty big skill gap on it. I will admit I have a skill issue with actually hitting it most of the time because it just shoots out very slowly. It's 3 separate Captain America looking shields, I will say, of sound waves that shoot out from the car. They do bounce off walls, so you could get some extra hits over time, which is cool. And there is technically an exploit in the game with some of the physics where it can sometimes attach to the vehicle and send them flying through the map doing a massive amount of damage. But honestly, I'm not going to take that into account with this list just because it's an exploit. It's a glitch. It's not meant to be that for that character. So that's why I feel like Thumper is decent for the most part, but their special weapon could have been a little better or just tweaked in a way where it wouldn't have been such a skill gap to use properly. His armor is just medium, and his speed and handling is also medium. Nothing too crazy to write home about, but all around, Thumper is a very good choice for most people, and he is fun to play as once you get over that skill gap for a special weapon. And moving on, number 7, we have Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth this time around is once again a unique version of said character, and I think this is probably one of the most balanced versions of Sweet Tooth I've seen in any of the games. I feel like it's just a very 50-50 spectrum for Sweet Tooth. You either love him or he's absolutely terrible. There's like no in between. And I feel Small Brawl honestly has probably been the perfect version of him in terms of being pretty balanced. He's not overly broken, and he's also not just straight up dog shit. He's actually a lot of fun to play as. He has okay armor, he has okay handling, and an okay speed. And his special weapon is pretty decent all around. It's not the best in certain levels, especially wide open maps like Gridiron Gore, but for most maps you can use it effectively, and essentially it's like a hockey puck that bounces off the walls and does extra damage every time it comes back. And it lasts for quite a while. You can hit multiple people with one special weapon, doing a devastating amount of damage if you use it properly and in the right locations. So there is a little bit of strategy involved. That's why I don't think his special weapon is anywhere near overpowered, but it is really, really good, and honestly one of my favorite iterations of his special in any of the Twisted Metal titles. So number 7 I think is a fair placement for him, just because again, he's not overpowered in any way. He doesn't have the best speed, not the best handling, and his armor, in my opinion, could be a little stronger. Moving on to number 6, we have Shadow. This is absolutely one of my favorite versions of this character in the series. I absolutely just love the look of their car. I love the way their special works. It's an actual Grim Reaper that comes out of the front of the vehicle, has a little bit of homing capabilities this time around, but it works the same as previous games where you can detonate it on command if it's within range of a character. But if you get a direct hit, it will automatically explode and do a devastating amount of damage. Their special weapon is probably one of my favorites in the game. Again, for its creativity, its look, and its damage output is just devastating. The actual car, though, it's okay. I think the armor, the speed, and the handling are all mid. It's pretty much just middle of the road. Nothing sticks out to me as negative, but just okay. It's really just his special weapon and the design of the vehicle that really stand out to me and why I love playing as Shadow. And yeah, I think number 6 is a very fair placement for him. Moving on, number 5 is Outlaw. This might be controversial for its placement. In my previous tier list, I ranked Outlaw as very low because I genuinely never liked playing as them. I didn't like their speed, their handling, or their armor, and I thought their special weapon was pretty mid. That was until my eyes were open to the fact that you can multiply his special weapon tenfold if you rapidly tap the button to shoot your special whenever you get it connected to a car. I never knew that was a possibility until now. So yes, this is why this car is probably one of the most famous vehicles in the game for speedrunners, because if you are fast enough with your hand, you can rapidly tap the special weapon button to do a devastating amount of damage to any character, because the special weapon lasts for quite a while and there doesn't seem to be any fall off for how fast you can actually tap it. Most games like Twisted Metal Black, for instance, with characters that involve you tapping the special weapon button to do extra damage, they do have a cap at how fast you can do it. Even if you use some type of modded controller, it still will not be overpowered or broken. In this case, though, man, Outlaw, yeah, you can literally break the game with how fast you can rapidly tap the button. Thus, you can pretty much one-tap characters like Warthog, Mr. Grimm, Spectre, Mime with one special just because of how broken it is. So I'm willing to let go the armor issues, the speed issues, and the handling issues, which is how busted his special weapon is. And that's why I'm moving him way up here to number 5. But he's also not number 1, in my opinion, because there's other factors that come into play with characters that are coming next on the list. So yeah, Outlaw, number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have the boss, the final boss of the game, I should say, Piecemeal. Once again, they are not number 1 on this list because of, just like Trapper, playing as Piecemeal, they are a massive downgrade from the boss counterpart. However, Piecemeal does feel like a force to be reckoned with when playing as them, and they have the exact same special weapon as Mime, only it's a little bit of a better version because the people's special that you gain, you don't need to have that character actually in the level with you. You can just cycle through and get any special weapon from the game basically at your fingertips, which is absolutely a pleasure to mess around with. And yes, that includes Outlaw's broken lightning special. So not only that, but you have a massive amount of armor. I feel like Piecemeal is one of the strongest characters in the game, even as the playable version, which is good to see. His speed and his handling is just okay. But yeah, the fact you can use anybody's special in the game along with really decent armor, I mean, he's just really a huge powerhouse. But there's a reason he's not number 1 on this list, and it's mainly because in all of my ranking videos, one extra criteria that I actually like to put into place here is that when it comes to boss characters, I do give them a couple points removed, mainly because they are technically a boss character. They're meant to be broken, they're meant to be overpowered, right? So if there's a regular character in the game that's unlocked right at the beginning, and they're just as good as a boss character, I'm probably going to rank that regular character on top of the boss character for obvious reasons. So for me, Piecemeal is at number 4. And at number 3, we have Slam. It's kind of funny to me that they named him just Slam and not Mr. Slam when Grimm is actually Mr. Grimm. It's just kind of a funny little oversight. But either way, Slam in this game is absolutely devastating and one of the best cars in the game by a country mile. I love the design of the car. They brought it back to the Twisted Metal 2 look of Mr. Slam, which I'm really happy about. I also like that the fact that his special weapon, it is technically just a remake of TM2's bucket special, where if you're in vicinity of somebody, you can grab them with your car, slam them a couple times on the ground, and then you chuck them forward, doing a really good amount of damage. But to help with the skill gap, Goodrich actually was able to implement a shockwave effect just like Axel's old special weapon. So if you are able to miss a character with the bucket, it'll slam it on the ground doing a shockwave, sending people flying and doing a little bit of damage. Now don't get me wrong, it's not overpowered, it doesn't do a ton of damage or anything, but the fact that his special weapon technically is 2 different special weapons in one, it just sets it apart for me. I mean, that's just awesome. It completely removes the skill gap section of his special. Not only that, he's not super sluggish or super slow. Granted, he is on that bottom tier for sure compared to cards like Crimson Fury, but he's not terrible in that regard, which is awesome to see, and his armor is absolutely devastating. He's one of the strongest cards in the game, for the regular cards that is. So yeah, you mix that crazy special weapon with really good armor, sign me up, man. So yeah, Slam for me is gotta be at number 3. And coming in at number 2, we have Twister. This one really surprises me even to this day that Twister is just this good in this game. But yeah, she's my favorite version by far in the entire series. I love the fact that when you use her special weapon, it does not deter your control of her vehicle at all. All it does is it puts a Twister on top of your vehicle, sucks up anybody in the vicinity, and it has no limit to how many characters can be in her special at once. And once it's done, it just chucks everybody out from away from you, doing a massive amount of damage. This can also, of course, be very broken on levels like Treetop Tumble, where you can just gather everybody up in one special and chuck them all off for an insta-kill and win immediately. Yeah, it's probably the most broken special weapon I've ever seen in any of the games, and that's next to Club Kid. It's just as broken. Not only that, but of course she has an insane amount of speed and her handling is amazing. Her only downside is her armor, and that's the reason she's not number 1 for me. So yeah, everything else though, Twister is probably my go-to pick most of the time when I come back to Small Brawl, because she's just that damn fun. But coming in at number 1, you probably have guessed it at this point, it's gonna be Darkseid. Darkseid in Small Brawl is just so absolutely busted, I couldn't not put them at number 1. I was actually debating at putting Twister at number 1, mainly because she's not an unlockable character. She's right away able to be played. And again, as I stated with Piecemeal, with unlockable characters, I do take a couple points away because you have to go out of your way to unlock said characters and make sure you're able to play as them. And the fact that you have to unlock a character, I feel that should make them a little bit more stronger than the regular characters you start out as. But Darkseid is fully on the other spectrum of this. I mean, you do have to unlock him, I will say that, but everything about him is just absolutely overpowered. He is a giant semi. He's honestly bigger than some of the boss characters you unlock in this game, which is hilarious. His speed is really decent for being a semi. His handling doesn't seem to have much of an issue at all in terms of other characters like Outlaw or Shadow. And his armor, I think, is probably the strongest character in the game. He is almost impossible to kill. He is so strong. And his special weapon, man. Oh my god. His special weapon. Essentially, it's the same special weapon as Darkseid in Twisted Metal Black. He honks his horn, he gets a speed boost, and you ram into opponents. However, the way that it works is it stays going for like, I think maybe 6 seconds, maybe 7 seconds, is around there. It doesn't sound like that long of a time frame. However, in this game, you can turn the special on, ram into someone, do a quick U-turn, come back and hit them again. And if you're really skilled enough, you sometimes can hit somebody 3 times with one special before it ends. And the amount of damage just hitting someone once does, you multiply that by 2, it's game over, dude. You can get so many insta-kills with Darkseid if you're skilled enough that it just, in my opinion, makes him the most broken character in the game and absolutely a powerhouse to play as and just insane fun. So yeah, for me, Darkseid is the #1 best character in Twisted Metal Small Brawl and really has no downsides to really consider other than that he is technically an unlockable character that you do not have right out the gate. So that is pretty much it for my ranking of the Twisted Metal Small Brawl characters from worst to best. Again, if you disagree with my list, that is totally okay. Let me know your list in the comment section below. I always love hearing you guys' thoughts on these games and keeping the conversation alive. If you also want to be a part of the Twisted Metal conversation, and if you have a Discord account, Highly recommend checking out the Twisted Metal Federation Discord in the description below. We have a lot of amazing people in there. We just passed 1,000 members, and it's growing every single day. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like, share, support as always, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out.